wouldn't understand me if I spoke Czech. The film you've seen is a very special film made only for TOURFILM. No one has seen it before, and no one's going to see it afterwards. It was made just for one screening at this event. So thank you, David, for going to all the trouble. I'm extremely happy to have David here. I'm not sure Czech television wanted to do a... Anyway, we'll leave that. Very happy that David's come all the way, and I think, David, if you want to take a seat.
It was the first time we ever discovered, science had no idea how coral reefs reproduce, which is quite amazing when we think that 30 years later they're under such pressure, and we, some scientists think we may lose them. But so these tiny little polyps have forged the greatest living structures ever built on this planet, and they've done it countless times. They first did it 500 million years ago, and then they vanished because of mass extinction event for nearly 14 million years, and then they came back into our oceans and built these immense empires, and they've come and gone many, many times. So these are remarkable creatures. You could call coral polyps almost immortal. They keep coming back into our world and they keep disappearing, while other life forms we never see again. So I didn't know any of this. I was working with these world-leading scientists, and they started to tell me these stories, and this was just fantastic. So I've been completely obsessed with these small creatures ever since, and the fact that nearly all life in our oceans is actually dependent upon these small creatures. Amazing, So.
How big are these coral polyps? And how do they tell each other that they're going to be releasing their sperm and their eggs?
These creatures date back over 500 million years and even earlier, and they've learnt to cue to the lunar cycles of the moon and the tide. So all life is cued to the moon and tide, because these guys represent the origins of life, including our own species.
So in other words,
people are probably familiar with these crazy people that are holding all their breaths for 20 minutes and crazy times. Well, back when I was a kid, we sort of started that all off. We would be in cars in the middle of cities, and people would be trying to break into our car to rescue us, because the whole family would be turning blue in the face. And so we had a very strange start. We would be walking around swimming pools holding our breaths and collapsing while my mother was entertaining guests, and she would just say, "Don't worry about them, they're just practicing for the diving."
And your father, he introduced you to a lot of diving spots in the Pacific, is that right?
Yes, he was a mighty hunter, actually. He was a fanatical hunter. I switched from the hunting to camera work, and in fact the hunting in the early years is what taught me so much about the ocean and gave me the confidence to be in the ocean, not fearful of other creatures. So this stood me in good stead when I took to filmmaking.
And if we can come back to the tragic accident with your father, what actually happened? Why did he die?
He died in Fiji in about 30 metres of water and was carried off by a big fish that he'd speared. This is what we are pretty sure happened. And so my mother found him. It was a freediving accident, and it was one of the early deaths that results from, if you hold your breath and you hyperventilate. None of the children today are allowed to do this in school, but at that stage about 16 of the top world's freedivers had died, and no one knew why. We now know this is from hyperventilation. It's called shallow water blackout. I'm not sure of the Czech translation, whether you'll get that.
And it was your mother who went into the water and discovered him?
Yes, she found him at about 40 metres of water. So.
What effect did that have on you? I mean, you didn't give up diving, as we can see, but what effect did it have on you?
My mother was a Olympic-level swimmer in a marathon. She had spent her whole life in the water. We had spent our whole life as kids in the water surfing and diving, and so there was no way we were going to stop our interest in the water. So in a funny way, it created a bit of a spiritual connection, and it made it even more important to me to keep diving.
Your mother was a famous portrait artist in Australia, and I know from all the international judgments of your films that it is the aesthetic quality which has made them so outstanding. Is this something which you've sort of picked up by living in an artist's milieu?
I think my father had the influence to get me into the water. He was a budding photographer and cinematographer, filmmaker, but his films are so awful that no one could watch them. We haven't even preserved them. They should have not been preserved for anybody. So my mother was not a filmmaker, but she was a very well-renowned artist and architect, interior decorator. So I hope that I got some of the genes from her, although I can't paint. So.
And you, as you said, you started off as a spear fisherman, a hunter, and then what did you do afterwards before you took up the camera? How did you, when did you start making your living, and what did you do?
When I was about 17, which was a year after my father died, I was on track to be in a university, economist and accountant, and I gave all that up, and I went and became a hippie for a year, and very quickly ended up as a professional fisherman on a lobster boat for the next 5 years, which gave me the sea time to become a commercial captain. And so for the next 5 to 10 years, I sailed around the Barrier Reef in the South Pacific, running dive charters. This was long before my filmmaking career. I feel like I've had many lives.
And then at some point you went to a film school, you did a film course. How much time did you spend studying filmmaking?
I only spent 1 year formally studying filmmaking. It was a postgraduate degree, quite a prestigious one, where about 8,000 people applied and they picked 8 people, and you got tutors for 1 year, very intensive training, almost 22 hours a day. In this course, their aim was to try and break you and destroy you, because they used to say, if you can't survive this year, you will never make the industry.
And what did you have to submit to be chosen? What made it, you know, what did they choose you for?
We had to submit a short story and a 8-shot. The competition, we had to, in 8 shots, represent from beginning to end a creative concept and a short story. I made up the most crazy stories I could think of, thinking I've only got one chance. You know, they're reading 8,000, and this worked. They thought my films were, and my entrance things were so strange that we better pull this guy in, so it seemed to work.
So it was 1 per mil?
Pardon?
1 per mil, one per thousand?
Yeah.
That's quite an achievement. Then, at what stage did you make Coral Sea Dreaming? Because that was the film that, if I understand correctly, made your reputation. It was pretty soon after, wasn't it?
It was 4 years. The first film that where I gained any recognition was 4 years after I started filming. And luckily it was about the subject of coral spawning. And that gained international interest in the media, because no one had seen coral spawning. No one knew how coral reefs reproduced, as we were talking before. So this was a bit lucky that I was with these scientists, that I was right on the edge. It was like filming dinosaurs, if you like, for the first time. No one had seen this event. And these scientists went on to become the world leaders in science today. So this was a very lucky connection for me, and it really helped me propel our films into the world.
Well, the reputation came as far as the German cement industry, so it was pretty broad. Then, what other films were you doing after Coral Sea Dreaming?
We did a film called Sex on the Reef, which we the title had to be changed in America. It was very conservative at that stage, to Life on the Reef. Life is sex, but so Sex on the Reef played for about 20 years, and it was a definitive story, not just about corals, but about reproduction, how all the ocean reproduces in the tropics.
How do you get, I mean, we saw a shot where you were very, very intimate or very close to an octopus. How did you manage to get that octopus to, you know, because from what I've seen, they always run away. but these octopi, they seem to be curious.
The trick to film octopus or cuttlefish or squid, creatures in the cephalopod family, is that you must become their boss. You must treat them, tell them that you are one of them and you are the biggest one, so that they don't fear you and they will obey you. So these octopus we worked for 3 months, and I could in the end go up and go there, go left, go right. And in fact, at the end of the 3 months working with this particular couple, the male came over and sat in a rock right in front of me, and the female came from 50 metres away onto the same rock, and then they made love in front of me with my giant camera. They wanted to be film stars. They're incredible creatures. That's
amazing. And I mean, 3 months, how many dives would that have amounted to? How many times would you go down?
I like working in very shallow water normally, because you can spend a lot of time underwater. So we might only do 4 dives a day, but that's 8 hours in the water at that depth. So, but of course we dive all night too. The whole ocean at night becomes more amazing than the daytime. So,
and just so that the people understand why there's a difference between shallow water and deep water diving, what makes it possible for you to spend more time in shallow water?
When you're diving in shallow water, you just have a lot more air supply. Your air supply lasts a lot longer. When you go down deep, you might only get 5 or 10 minutes to stay at a certain depth. So it's very short time to find anything happening and then film it properly. So shallow water is not just the most beautiful area, it's also where the most life is, and it has the most natural colours from light. So it's where the most activity is and the most beautiful conditions. And it's also easy to pop up if something goes wrong. Yes?
Now, David is not only famous as a filmmaker, I'm not sure if we've got a photograph in the back. He's also the only man in the world who has a surfing dog. So his next career is going to be training and marketing his dog who can surf. Můžeme pustit někde tu fotku? Máme ji? Here we are. Tell us something about Gemma.
Well, Gemma is a perfect example of how to stir up tourism in an interesting way for the island. She's a dingo, which is a native Australian dog, or part dingo. And she's not the only surfing dog, but we think she's the best surfing dog. And in Australia we have competitions for surfing dogs. You can even go to special classes for having your dogs trained to surf. So we decided, Sandy and me, my partner, that we wanted to have the best surfing dog, and maybe we could retire and become her managers. And so we're looking to take her worldwide. But we trained her from a puppy when she was about 6 inches. So she really had no choice. But like me, when my father put me in the water at 7, I think you repeat life, what happens to you. And so Gemma had no choice, and now she's a champion, and everybody on the island where I live, she's famous there. She gets special privileges. No other dogs are allowed on some beaches. Gemma's allowed, so she's rather special. I'd love to bring her next year.
And how did you get her to get used to the board and do the right things on the board?
Sheer terror. You take a dog out there at the start and they're on a cork board, and they just hold on. And after surviving a few waves, they start to enjoy themselves. There's actually surfing pigs. There's a very famous surfing pig that I keep getting told about, and people keep saying we should breed Gemma with the pig to produce a new creature that would be quite amazing.
David lives on an island, which is where that photo was taken, right?
Yes.
Could you tell us something about Stradbroke, North Stradbroke Island?
It's an island that's only 25 minutes by passenger ferry just off Brisbane, Australia. So the equivalent would be if Prague was by the sea and you caught a ferry 20 minutes away, and it's a 50 kilometre long island. It sits in the beautiful blue water. We have up to 5,000 whales go past us in the whale season. And it's just a beautiful place to live, and it's one of the oldest indigenous communities there in Australia, and it's very special. They have special land rights, and which is a unique political decision that was made a couple of years ago. So it's a very interesting community. We have surfing dogs and indigenous relationships with crazy fishermen and mad artists on the island, and lots of it is natural, and we can drive on our beaches there, which is quite amazing.
And you mentioned the indigenous population.
Pojmeme to dneska trošku neformálně, že pokud budete cokoliv potřebovat, můžete si chytnout i samostatně, jsme vám teďka k dispozici.
And of course we have to introduce Michael Havas as well. So we'll take him informally for your questions as well as the introduction. I would like to ask for it. I will send that.
Já jsem se rád, že můžu tady představit svého kamaráda, spolupracovníka a úžasného podmístního kameramana, jeden z nejlepších na světě, David Hannan. A v podstatě žije na takovém opuštěném ostrově v Brisbane. Tam je 2900, je to 50 km dlouhý ostrov, je tam 2500 nebo 2900 lidí. Stačilo to, aby měl před rokem vážnou nehodu v autě. Nějaký kolejníci jeli na pravé straně, tam se jezdí na ledy, a oni se setkali a byly tam 3 helikoptéry jako boudík, který vyvá z toho poměrně dobře. Cokoliv, aby byla publicita. Takže tam ty byly dlouho, několik měsíců, byly pak v nemocnici, takže to tak nebyla. Nevím, co byste chtěli vědět. Asi nejlepší bude, když začnete, nevím, jestli jste byli na tom, abyste viděli trošku, co natáčí, jak myslí, přemýšlí, ale je tady a prosím, dejte se.
Jestli bych se mohla zeptat, mě by zajímalo, proč pana Hannana tolik fascinují právě koreálce na mezinárodní
Corals are the greatest terraformer our planet has ever seen. They make the biggest constructions that we've ever seen on this planet. We can see them from outer space. They are so small and they are so vulnerable. They look so fragile, yet they are so powerful that they survive 500 million years, and humans have been here for 2 million years. These creatures are like godlike powers. They have godlike powers. They are extraordinary.
Co se týče korálů, tak jsou to útvary, které jsou obrovské, obřích rozměrů, takže zachytíte mimo naši Zem z vesmíru. A přesto jsou to útvary tak malé, které tady existují více než 500 milionů let. Pro srovnání, člověk je na této Zemi, na této planetě 2 miliony let. Takže to je to, proč mě tak fascinuje.
Do čeho se hodláte pustit v nejbližší době a v nějakém dlouhém časovém horizontu? Co zajímavého budete mít připraveno?
The next big projects we have is to develop a 3D shark project called Shark Odyssey with Steve Leichhardt, Twin Star Films, which Michael is involved with this company too. So that's a very big project.
Jeden z obrovských projektů, který před námi stojí a ve kterém také spolupracuji s panem Havasem a Stevem Leichhardtem, je 3D film nebo dokument, který se týká žraloků. Je to žraločí Odyssea, co se týče názvu.
Steve and some of the 3D specialists are flying to Australia in 1 week to my island, and we are developing some ideas, technical ideas of how to do this film.
Steve Leichhardt a další specialisté na 3D technologie zhruba za týden přiletí k nám na ostrov do Austrálie a budeme se zabývat nejenom technologickou stránkou toho projektu, a samozřejmě také obsahem, nápady.
The other major project is on the philanthropic side, where we are giving out our media to some big hospitals and to some very big education systems. So we're hoping to see a big increase in education on the marine. In particular, Michael Abbas is representing the Oceanic Alliance, and we're hoping to get materials into the Czech Republic and Europe through Michael.
Co se týče dalších projektů, tak ty mají spíš takovou filantropickou stránku, spolupracujeme s velkým řetězcem nemocnic, stejně jako s školskými zařízeními a bude se to týkat vzdělávání. Pan Havas reprezentuje alianci Ocean Arc, o které jste možná slyšeli, a jejím cílem je vzdělávání a šíření povědomí o ochraně podmořského života a samozřejmě poskytování také videomateriálu, třeba tady v České republice. A jeho zástupcem bude právě pan Havas.
Tak mohli bychom třeba doplnit, v kterých vodách se ten dokument bude natáčet?
Yeah, can you just specify the waters where you were planning on going to shoot this material, this documentary shots?
The material for the shark documentary is proposed to be in a large part in Australia and in regional waters, in Australian waters. We have some specialist friends of mine that understand exactly where to go for some of the sequences. But the project is very new. We could evolve to be many locations, but the plan in particular is to visit one place that is the biggest turtle rookery in the world, called Rain Island. Rain Island, 40,000 turtles can be coming in one night to this. This is a very special, remote.
Co se týče těch vod, tak jsou to místní australské vody. Mám přátelé, kteří se opravdu vyznají. A jedno místo, které bychom určitě do toho scénáře a minimálně do některých záběrů rádi zakomponovali, je takzvaný Rain Island, kde během jedné noci se schází, či připlouvá, abych byla přesná, připlouvají miliony žalv. Takže to by měla být další součást tohoto scénáře o žraloci.
Yeah.
Right, is it right?
R-A-I-N-E. We have to look it up.
Prosím další otázky. Já bych se možná zeptala, která ta část práce pana Hannana je pro něho nejdůležitější nebo nejvíce časově náročná. Je filmář, má vlastní produkční společnost, je potapěčem.
From the underwater side of things, the most time-consuming is the macro, the small creatures, filming a small fish. I might spend 2 weeks filming the small fish, just waiting for something to happen. It's not exciting work, it's very boring, but when you see it on the screen, it's, oh man, it's fantastic. And people think the job is very exciting, but it requires great patience, really.
Co se týče té podmořské filmařiny, pokud to tak mohu nazvat, tak samozřejmě na obrazovce to vypadá, nebo na snímcích to vypadá jinak, ale pokud se potápíte a filmujete nějaké malé živočichy nebo třeba korál, tak používáte technologii makro a strávíte třeba 2 týdny tím, že se zabýváte jedním malým mikroživočichem a potom to někomu pustíte, on řekne, to vypadá skvěle, vypadá to nádherně, ale v skutku ta práce je strašně nudná a není to tak, že byste ten záběr měla na poprvé.
With regards to the most important work, I think it is the documentation of these coral reefs that will no longer be here soon. For me it's very important, it may be strange, but I like to show the world and leave a record of this world that is vanishing. It's like if you can imagine filming the dinosaurs, you would have the opportunity to film the dinosaurs. How fantastic would this be to have a record?
Možná si řeknete, že to není příliš optimistické, ale co se týče práce dokumentaristy, tak chci vlastně zachytit svět, který tady třeba do budoucna už nebude existovat. Není to, jak jsem zmínila, optimistické, ale pokud bychom měli v minulosti šanci natočit například dinosaury, tak bychom tu nějakou vzpomínku nebo nějaký záznam prostě měli a zachovali. To je to, proč natáčím korálové útesy.
Poprosím další otázky, jestli máte. Pokud už nejsou individuální dotazy, Tak pan Hannan i pan Hlasu vám samozřejmě k dispozici pro natáčení a pro vaše individuální rozhovory. Samozřejmě přijměte i pozvání na drobné občerstvení. A jenom co se týká organizační záležitostí za mě, tak zítra tady v pravé poledne už ve 12 hodin je velká tisková konference k vyhlášení výsledků letošního TOURFILMu. Poté je menší bránič Media Party, která je pro vás připravená. Takže samozřejmě vás zveme i zítra na pravé poledne.